the deadly crystal cave beneath Mexico, beneath the desert of northern Mexico, in the state of Chihuahua. There's a mine that looks ordinary from the outside. The Naica Mine has been producing silver, lead, and zinc for more than a century. Generations of miners have worked here, drilling deeper and deeper into the mountain. But what they uncovered in the year 2000 turned out to be one of the most extraordinary and dangerous natural discoveries ever made. Two miners, brothers named Juan and Pedro Sanchez, were drilling a new tunnel when the rock suddenly gave way. Instead of another wall of ore, their lights hit something that looked like glass. They had broken through into a vast empty space filled with enormous, translucent beams stretching in every direction. It took a few seconds to understand what they were looking at. The walls, the ceiling, and even the floor were covered in crystals. Some of them more than 10 meters long, weighing over 50 tons. The brothers had stumbled upon a hidden world that had been sealed for hundreds of thousands of years. The chamber became known as the Cave of Crystals, Cueva de los Cristales. Scientists soon realized that what they had found was unique on Earth. The crystals were made of selenite, a transparent form of gypsum. They had grown slowly in mineral-rich water that filled the chamber long before humans ever existed. Far below the surface, magma heated the water to around 58 degrees Celsius, keeping the temperature steady for hundreds of thousands of years. In that perfect stability, tiny mineral particles began to crystallize. Over unimaginable spans of time, they grew larger and larger, 1 millimeter at a time every 100 years, until they reached the size of buildings. Nothing like it had ever been seen before. But there was a reason this place had remained hidden for so long. It was deadly to humans. Inside the cave, the temperature reaches between 50 and 58 degrees Celsius. The humidity is almost 100%. Breathing there feels like breathing inside a sauna that never ends. Sweat doesn't evaporate, and the body has no way to cool down. Within minutes, a person begins to lose consciousness. Without protection, death can occur in less than 10 minutes. Even with cooling suits, oxygen tanks, and careful planning, scientists could only stay inside for 20 to 30 minutes at a time. Cameras fogged instantly. Metal instruments burned to the touch. The air itself was thick and heavy. Every step felt like moving through water. Those who entered described it as the most beautiful but most hostile place they had ever seen. The crystals were enormous, shining like frozen sunlight. Yet the floor was slippery with condensation and the air shimmered with heat. The deeper they went, the more disorienting it became. In that glowing heat, the sense of distance disappeared. There was no sound, no breeze, no sign of life. Only the slow drip of condensation falling from crystal to crystal. The conditions that created the cave were as specific as they were fragile. The magma below heated the groundwater to just the right temperature. Not hot enough to dissolve the gypsum completely, but warm enough to keep it slowly crystallizing. When the mining company drained the groundwater to access deeper ore deposits, it exposed the chamber for the first time in history. But removing that water also destroyed the delicate balance that had allowed the crystals to grow. Once the chamber was dry, the crystals began to deteriorate. They cracked, dried, and collected dust. Every human breath added moisture and bacteria that didn't belong there. The very act of discovering the cave started its decay. Scientists from Mexico and other countries rushed to study it before it was lost. Teams brought in cooling equipment and special suits designed to keep body temperatures down. Even with all that, they worked in short shifts. The extreme heat and humidity made every movement exhausting. Researchers would enter the cave, take a few samples, and then retreat to a refrigeration chamber set up nearby to recover. They worked methodically, trying to understand how such gigantic crystals could have formed and how old they really were. Estimates place their age at around 500,000 years. During these expeditions, scientists also noticed tiny bubbles of fluid trapped inside the crystals. Some of them contained microorganisms, ancient bacteria that had been sealed away since the crystals first formed. When these samples were examined years later, researchers found that some of the microbes were still alive, even though they had been isolated for tens of thousands of years. They had survived without sunlight or oxygen, feeding on minerals in microscopic pockets of liquid. It was an astonishing discovery. It showed that life could endure in environments that would instantly kill most living things. For NASA scientists, it also meant that life could potentially survive beneath the surface of other planets, hidden in similar mineral-rich conditions. The Cave of Crystals quickly became famous among geologists and biologists alike, but access was strictly limited. The danger was too great, and the environment too unstable. Visitors had to follow strict safety procedures. Even professional photographers and scientists risked serious injury. The mine's operators allowed only a few short expeditions before closing it to the public completely. What people saw in the photographs, enormous glowing pillars stretching through the mist, were real, but they represented moments that could never be repeated. In 2015, the Naica Mine shut down its operations. Without the pumps that had been draining the groundwater, the chambers began to refill. Slowly, the mineral-rich water rose again, submerging the cave. By the following year, it was completely flooded. The crystals were once again covered by the same hot, saturated liquid that had created them in the first place. Scientists believe that the flooding may actually have saved the cave, preserving it from further damage and allowing the crystals to continue growing. But it also meant that no one would ever see it again. Today, the Cave of Crystals is sealed beneath hundreds of meters of rock and boiling groundwater. The tunnels leading to it are closed, and the equipment that once kept it dry is gone. The temperature and pressure inside have returned to their natural state. The crystals, untouched now for years, are continuing their slow growth in total darkness. There is no way to study them without draining the cave again, and doing so would almost certainly destroy the environment that keeps them intact. For all practical purposes, the Cave of Crystals has disappeared. Only a few hours of video footage and a handful of photographs remain. The people who entered it described the experience as overwhelming. Not mystical, but physical. The air was too thick to breathe, the heat unbearable, and the silence absolute. They said it felt less like visiting a cave and more like stepping into a living organism. It was beautiful, yes, but also disturbing, because it felt as though the place rejected human presence. You could walk among the crystals, touch them carefully with gloved hands, but you always knew you didn't belong there. What makes the story of Naica so unsettling is how brief our encounter with it was. For 500,000 years, the crystals grew undisturbed. Humans discovered them, studied them for just 15 years, and then lost them again. It's a reminder of how much of Earth remains hidden, and how fragile those hidden worlds can be when exposed. Every photo you see of the Cave of Crystals shows something that no longer exists in that form. The air, the temperature, the light, all of it changed the moment we entered. No one knows if the cave will ever be accessible again. It might remain underwater for centuries, or it could dry out one day if the mine reopens. But if it does, the crystals may be too fragile to survive another exposure. In a way, it's better this way. Preserved in silence, beyond reach, still growing in the darkness as they have for ages. The Cave of Crystals is one of those rare places that show how small and temporary we are compared to the forces of the planet. It is not a legend or a myth. It's real. A hidden chamber of stone and light, deep under the desert, too hot to enter, too fragile to touch. For a brief time, we saw it. Then it closed itself again, as if the earth decided that was enough. Thanks for watching Forgotten Destinations. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It truly helps this channel grow. And tell me in the comments, what forgotten, eerie, or haunted place should we uncover next? I'll see you in the next video. And until then, stay curious, stay safe,